And you heard from Action SA earlier on telling us that they held a Senate meeting to discuss the future of coalitions. Now, the party says this meeting came in the wake of the collapse of the multi-party government in Johannesburg. And of course, it has mounting concerns for the stability of coalitions in Gauteng. At the same time, DA Federal Council Chair Hellen Zille says if coalition agreements are here to stay, then big changes must be made. Let's talk to her now. She joins us. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's start with your view on what happened when it comes to, what Action SA calls the collapse of the multi-party government arrangement.
Thank you, Bungiwe, and good afternoon. The root cause of the problem is that in South Africa, coalitions are not worth, or coalition agreements are not worth the paper they are written on. They don't have the legal weight of binding contracts, which they should have. In every country in the world where coalitions work, coalition agreements have the force of binding contracts for a full term. That is not the case in South Africa, and parties can simply discard and disregard the coalition agreements if a better offer comes along from the ANC.
And for example, how much of a contribution, though, would you say the DA is responsible for the chaos that we've seen recently?
Well, the DA did one thing. We insisted that we all abide by the coalition agreement that we signed very publicly in February this year. Now, in every country in the world where coalitions work, coalition agreements are seen as binding contracts till the next election. There are no such things as random and arbitrary motions of no confidence. They don't exist because a coalition agreement is a binding contract till the next election. And the only thing the DA did was to insist that if coalitions are to have a future in South Africa, and if they are to be viable as stable governments, then we need to do the same. We need to respect the agreements that were negotiated and that were entered into. They must be respected. Otherwise, there's no hope for coalitions.
I was in conversation with Action SA's Bongani Baloyi, who says that the DA was displaying sheer arrogance as part of this arrangement, almost like the other parties are subservient to the Democratic Alliance. He's not the only one. Colleen Makobelo from COPE as well expressed the same sentiments. How do you respond?
Sticking to a signed agreement is not arrogance. It is respect for the rule of law. When your opponents start labeling you, then you know they haven't got any rational arguments left. I'll take you back to Nelson Mandela Bay in 2018, when people also voted against the DA and our coalition government fell. They also said that was because we were supposedly arrogant. And so that was a reason to give Nelson Mandela Bay back to the thieving ANC, because we were supposedly arrogant, which wasn't true at all. The real reason is emerging now, because people have been arrested for accepting bribes of 100,000 rand each to vote against the DA. So when people start labeling you, you must know that just is a smokescreen to hide their real reason. And that is the politics of bribery, of extortion, and of corruption. And where the DA is in government, we want to be better than that. We don't want to repeat the misery that the ANC's corruption has brought on South Africa, and we don't want coalitions to be the repeat of that.
So are you saying, though, that these are unfounded allegations that the Democratic Alliance is coming through with sheer arrogance here? Because there was also a concern that the former speaker, Vasco da Gama, was also making things difficult when it comes, to the work that needed to be done there. It's the same thing that some of the, your coalition partners have said as well, to say that they have also, made their points, put across their points to the Democratic Alliance, but the Democratic Alliance was not listening to them. They even say that there was infighting in your quarters as well.
The Democratic Alliance has been very united in its approach to coalitions. We have never been arrogant. We have listened to argument after argument, sometimes listening and talking till the early hours of the morning. We have spent hours, days, weeks, and months in these discussions, and we've always listened. And when we reached agreement, we were all very happy to sign on the dotted line to celebrate in all the places that we took office as a coalition government. Now, the only thing that the DA has done is to say that we regard those coalition agreements as valid and as binding. And there is no other thing that anybody can point to as arrogance. And when we say we are sticking by the coalition agreement, other parties who want to get more out than they managed to negotiate and wanted to change the agreement when our coalition was at its most vulnerable, then accused us of arrogance as a simplistic smokescreen that the media was only too keen to lap up because they did not want to actually do the work of delving more deeply into the real issues.
And one of the things, though, that would be interesting is to see some of the agreements. But I'm keen to hear.
They were made public.
I know they were made public, but there were some other questions that we had when it comes to that. But let's continue this discussion, because there are some points you make here that I'm so keen to hear from you on, especially when it comes to how things going forward. Before we talk about this power that you say the smaller parties have and things should change on that particular front, there's another, some that have said on social media, and I'm sure you've seen it because you engage with people quite a lot, that you left Palazzi to hang as the national government of the Democratic Alliance. You put all of this on her lap and you did not give her the support that was required, and also even not heeding to some of her advice. What do you say to that? Because it also did come up in some of the conversations that were being had that maybe the national government here, the national DA, let her down.
That is categorically untrue. I have been in contact with Palazzi's office, Mayor Palazzi's office, every single day since she came into office. I've listened, I've responded. I was up in Johannesburg most of this week. We speak to each other very regularly, and there is no issue around this crisis on which I have not consulted her and taken guidance from her.
Let's talk about this system that you say, and I'm going to borrow from some of your words here. You say that in our system, a party can get someone elected into office on the basis of a fraction of 1% of the vote. That prospect serves as a magnet of populists, extremists, and demagogues to enter politics, knowing that even with a relatively small handful of votes, they are likely to be elected. And then you continue to say that there needs to be a relook of this particular point here. How much of a concern is that for you, given the fact that this is a reality going into 2024 as well?
Well, South Africa has to learn from countries that are successful in running coalitions. And across Europe, you have successful coalitions. Most countries in Europe don't know any other form of government but coalitions. And there are several reasons why they are successful. I've studied them very closely because I have been in coalitions for 25 years almost in South Africa. So I know a lot about coalitions. And one of the key reasons why these coalitions are successful is because there is a threshold that a party needs to meet before it gets any seat in government and before it can be part of a coalition. And that is vital, because then you have stable coalitions of about 2 to 3 parties rather than the kind of 9-party coalitions as we had in Johannesburg, or 10-party coalitions as we have in Nelson Mandela Bay, which are effectively completely ungovernable. Let's just look at Nelson Mandela Bay. There we have a 10-party coalition. It took us 9 months to negotiate that coalition agreement. And when Retief Odendaal, our mayor, was elected there, he got 60 votes against the combined opposition's 59 votes. Now, you don't have to be Einstein to work out that if just one of our coalition partners that gave us the 60 votes moves over to the other side that has 59 votes, our government will fall. And in that context, it is impossible to have a stable government. Now, if we want to destroy the concept of coalitions, we must continue having these completely unmanageable, huge coalitions where some smaller parties sell themselves to the highest bidder and make sure that they basically extort the best deal they can from their coalition partners, even after a coalition agreement has been signed, because they want more jobs or more perks or contracts or whatever they want. It is absolutely impossible to run stable coalitions in that context.
And I suppose then you're probably just referring to I mean, looking at your tweets, the Patriotic Alliance there. But before, we don't have a lot of time. We're out of time. In fact, I'm keen to hear if you think you'll still be able to hold on to Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, given how things are happening right now.
Well, we never give up without a fight. We will fight really, really hard because our voters put us there to fight. And at the next election, the voters will realize that it is really important to unite behind one big party if they want stable government. And I think after their experiences of what the ANC and other parties are going to do in Gauteng in the next couple of months, there will be a very clear choice for them to make. Because after all, people get the government they voted for, which is the government they deserve.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I do appreciate it. That is Hellen Zille, DA Federal Council Chair, talking to us about the coalitions. And of course, we've seen quite a lot of instability in the city of Johannesburg. We saw quite a lot happening in Tshwane, and now, of course, developments around the Ekurhuleni. We're seeing MMCs there having been removed. So there's quite a lot going on when it comes to the coalition arrangement, which then, of course, leads to a lot of concerns going into the future.